the topic, as you can see, is co-creative and transformative learning environments. And we have three excellent people with us who will share their ideas and knowledge to the audience. I will shortly introduce them. Normally on the website, you can find a much longer introduction, but I'll keep it short. Sitting next to me is Lilian Trechsel. She is the head of Transformative Education and Science Impact Area at the Center for Development and Environment at the University of Bern in Switzerland. Willkommen. Okay. Next to her, Gustavo Rodriguez. And there is a little change in his description. It still says he's an assistant PhD, which is not true because he got his PhD a couple of months ago. So congratulations. He's lecturing at the Leuphana University, Lüneburg, with the research group Process of Sustainable Transformation. Your doctoral project was about transformation of the textile fashion industry in Mexico. Okay, so bienvenido. Okay, de nada. And then last but not least, we have Liesbeth Huybrechts, and she's playing home, more or less. She's an associate professor in the Spatial Capacity Building Research Group of the Hasselt University. And her research focuses on exploring the role of participatory design in the carefully shaping of sustainable and spatial change. Welcome. So with these three people, you're going to be really thrilled this afternoon with the information they're going to provide to you. But you're going to choose, like we did this morning. There are 6 questions. So I'm going to ask you to take your phones again, or whatever you have to go online, to go to menti.com. There is a different code. So hopefully this is the correct. It is the 6658-9779 is the code to access. And you can also use, of course, the QR code. I think it works if you use your phone. So, and then you will go and find normally, do you get access to the questions? Yeah, you see them? Okay. So there will be 6 questions. I'll show them here in large scope. What success factors can support co-creation of transformative learning environments? And what barriers might impede this? That's the first. The second, how can we make sure that the co-creation and transformative learning processes are inclusive? A bit related to also some of the things we discussed this morning. Third question, how should we transform evaluation and assessment in higher education? Tricky one. Fourth question, how can we ensure that assessment is used as part of transformative learning experiences rather than as a criteria in making students pass or fail? Fifth question, how can teachers and professors be rewarded in higher education? Given there are a lot of teachers here, I think that might be interesting. In other words, in which extent do you agree that the evaluation system in place for higher education staff should be shaken up? And the sixth question, how can research and publishing research be redesigned so that it supports co-creation instead of solution through commodified competition? Not the easiest questions, but challenging questions. Okay, so you can choose 2. You're doing that right now. And I'm going to ask if they can put on the board so we can see the Menti evolution. So there is a bit of competition here between 3, 6, and 4. That's 3 and 6. We're going to give it half a minute more. It's working. So the end result is, we're going to do the 3rd question, the 6th, and then the 4th. Okay. Thank you. Doesn't mean we're not going to tackle the other questions. Maybe during the process it will happen. So I'm going to go to the question which had the most, which was the 3rd. So that question is the following. How should we transform evaluation and assessment in higher education? First of all, should we transform? And if yes, how? Who wants to open that question? Okay, Lilian.
Thank you. Thank you for this invitation, being here on this panel. Very important. I think assessment is part of transformative learning, so we should not get rid of it. It's part that we really need it. Here it's also in the question if we have evaluation and assessment. I don't like this so much to distinguish that, so I stay with assessment here because I think it's not so fruitful to have this discussion between assessment and evaluation here. We often talk about assessment and in education, and often people think about that we do assessment of learning. And I think it's really important that we not just concentrate of this of learning, that there is also assessment for learning and assessment as learning. And this is a distinction that I got really important. It's from Erlang Katz. And I think it's important that we are not just looking at this classical way of analyzing and assessment. If we reached the learning outcomes, for example, that we really look at the assessment for learning, so that we look at assessment throughout the learning process of students.
Okay, can we add on that one or build on that one?
Yeah. Yeah, for example, in Spanish, we don't have this distinguish between evaluation and assessment. I would call it evaluation or evaluación. It's a very interesting question, which everyone, I mean, all over the world in higher education institutions, but also at lower levels in formal education, we are struggling with, especially also relating to my experience in Mexico, where we are importing European models with the competency discourse. And now the urgency is to evaluate the competencies, but the problem is that we are failing with the same practices like business as usual. And the first thing we need to think about evaluation is what's the purpose of evaluation, and what are the ethical implications, and which decisions are going to be taken after that. That's very important. Because first of all, as a student, I'm talking my personal experience, when I used to think about evaluation, I was very scared. Also because I had this pressure to get perfect grades during my high school, university, etc. And it was a very coercive from my parents, but also from other structures in society, that evaluation is only a quantitative indicator that defines you as a person, as a good learner, I mean, as a good student or bad student. And we lost the focus on the learning. And so first and then what I mean is that we lost the purpose on evaluation. Then first we need to rethink, and to also when I say to my students when I'm teaching that don't worry too much about the score, the grades, worry about what you're learning. If we are not learning all together in the seminar, in the course, etc., then we can talk, we can reflect upon that, etc. So I will keep with this, that we must reflect upon the purpose and evaluation, and also the decisions after the evaluation, which decisions are taken when we engage in evaluation processes.
Okay, so the word coming back, that was also this morning, purpose. So maybe Lilian, you can also, Liesbeth, you can talk about what's the purpose of evaluation and assessment? Why did we include it in programs and in universities? And what's your point of view on that?
Yeah, I think that for a very long time, we have focused a lot on our disciplines and our expertise. And if we then define the capabilities we have to build within educational programs, they are very expert-based, which means that the evaluation is also very expert-based. And what concerns the sustainability challenges of today, who are immensely complex, of course, we have to learn, we have to define additional capabilities that we are not evaluating yet. And the characteristic of these capabilities is, I've called this, we have to re-world our educational learning environments, with which I mean is that we have to connect the expertise world that we create to the world. and not to one world, but to the very diverse worlds in which people live and work. If we are working on new energy solutions, nobody will accept it, use it, implement it if you do not connect to the worlds in which they are used. People feel very distant from the climate discussion because they can often not afford to implement the expertise that you propose. So that means that you have to start co-creating you have to co-create while learning. And in several European projects that we are doing currently, we have tried to define what are these capabilities then? How can we reworld our educational learning programs? Because it's only when you can define what you are learning and co-creating that you can evaluate together in a peer-reviewed way, because of course there is no educator and there's no student, you're co-producing, co-learning. How can you evaluate that together? And then a point of articulation is very important, I think. It's a very ethical, political process. And we try to define 4 capabilities that we experiment with in different educational programs. And one is the aspect of retracing. How can we teach our students not to just project or test expertise in real life worlds, but try to detect how people are using, for instance, energy or dealing with energy on a daily level in their homes, and then start connecting, building relations with these ways of working. So we teach them approaches of interviews, mapping, making videos, trying to trace daily life worlds. Reconnecting is a second one. How can we learn or teach or learn together how to connect between disciplines, between daily life worlds that are very diverse. The one who is high middle class and has the money to have solar panels, and the one who lives in a social housing facility, and so on. So how can we learn to build connections? So students gain skills in organizing gatherings, workshops, and so on. Reimagining. There was a whole discussion this morning. We have to build new worlds. I do not completely agree. There are already a lot of worlds, and we do not even understand them properly. So how can we reimagine a world where these different worlds connect better? Because if it proceeds like this in the climate discussion, there's a huge polarization around topics that prevents solidarity and collective actions. So we really have to reimagine how we together can create different worlds. So we teach our students to build together in neighborhoods, at people's homes, new energy solutions or new housing typologies and so on, and materialize it so people can get it and can connect it to their own lives. And then the fourth, and that I find also very important, is the aspect of reinstitutioning. Because in our educational programs, we experiment a lot, we do a lot of interesting work, but how does it transfer into institutional change, policy change, and so on? So we train also students in trying to connect to institutional actors, work with policymakers, and so on, when they start building these new, so inviting them to workshops, exploring new participatory methods to work with these institutional actors. So that is from our research, but I think in evaluation, we have to articulate much better what we desire from our program.
And there is a reply coming.
Yeah, it was interesting to hear your approach of this reworlding. I liked it, and I did research on student learning experiences, and something that came out was really that this position of so-called boundary agents who really connect different worlds is so crucial. And in this case, there were the students who had projects outside of the universities or higher education institutions, and they really had this position of being in different worlds, being in this university setting, but also being with actors. And I think we really have to look at these kind of people and person, or also find out who is the boundary agent, or who are boundary agents in our field. But coming back to the question about if we need this assessment, I think it's also important to, if we have this assessment, or it's part that we also think about the structures. We heard this morning from Kate that we are somehow have this lock-in, but we have given structures, but it's important that we also think, when thinking about assessment, that you think about quality assurance. So how can we really have the right frameworks in our countries, in our institutions, to really make them fit to the assessment we want to do. And yeah, I think this is also very important.
I would like to connect a bit with the other question, because it's, for me, if you evaluate students, it's quite often pass and fail. Should we get rid of that? Should we do it differently? Because that's a bit the question. How can we assure the assessment is used as part of transformative learning experience rather than a criteria to make students pass or fail? Because we still have to give them a grade. They still have to get a PhD or whatever. So how do you do that then?
We have very good systems in place already for that. In the academic community, we use peer review all the time. And actually, we don't apply it, I think, enough in our educational programs. If you consider yourself not anymore as someone who is an outsider, but part of a transformational learning process, then it's not okay anymore to say, okay, I take an objective position and I make an evaluation. So that's not an applicable model, I think. But of course, indeed, you have to give grades. So what do you do? I think, and that is what happens in peer review processes, you try to involve as diverse possible people in the evaluation process. For instance, in most of our educational modules, we invite, if we work on, for instance, transformation of garden cities into energy resilient futures, we involve the policymaker, some neighbors, an expert in energy, an expert in housing, and we make them part of a bigger group who qualitatively try to evaluate the process at not one time in the process, but several times in the process. And in that way, okay, you can try to, okay, this is very good, this is, but you agree with a very diverse group with very different perspectives, and it's part of the discussion, right? So there's this aspect of peer review, very regular moments of peer review, and also recognizing the politics of these peer review processes, where there are power differences. So it's also something we tend to forget, because if group processes become complex, some are suppressed, some come out. So also giving guidelines to these peer reviewers, how they can take these things also into account.
Oh.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. Connecting to the peer review, I think that all of the people that who have been engaged, most of you or many of you have already engaged in the publishing process with the journal, right? And when I submitted my first article, I wanted to be accepted right away. But then with experience, I learned that if my paper is accepted right away, I would be very skeptic about it, because that would mean that probably the review process was not that good. And the thing, the peer review process is very, I think in my PhD, I've learned a lot of things mainly from the reviewers, because they provide very, very good feedback, that because we are in the same logic with my professors, with my supervisors, etc., and then we escape that kind of limits. And so the point, the value here of the peer review is the feedback and reflection. Because, for example, when we gather with the supervisor, with the other authors, then we reflect upon what we did good, what we did wrong. And also, these peer reviews, what I related to what is called the formative evaluation, and that is very taking the evaluation as a learning process, as a learning experience, and also connecting back to the purpose of evaluation. If we want to, if the purpose of right now in education, higher education, is to contribute to the formation of students to become active citizens in the transformation for sustainability of this world, then the traditional instrumental approaches are not longer, they do not fit, because we are thinking about complex problems when we're engaging in inter and transdisciplinary manner, and somehow we need to design better instruments which require more time, more effort. For example, these so-called performance tasks. I'm not sure if you have heard it. It's a very interesting evaluation tool. And with that, we are accompanying the students or even our peers in navigating their learning and providing feedback, reflecting together, etc. And that is, I think, is critical. And then students, or the learners, I would say, better, the thing also, me as a learner, I wouldn't feel alone, because then I will feel that someone is caring about my learning. And this is very crucial. And then the passing or fail, it's a matter of so the focus is no longer that obviously you need to get a grade about your performance, but it's on the second, I don't know, plane, or the second, or in the background, I would say. So considering formative evaluation as an accompanying learning process and experience providing spaces for reflection, it's key if we want to consider the transformation of evaluation on assessment.
I would like to make a difference between, okay, PhD and publications and students graduating at the university and they want a grade or something. There is, I mean, I work with students too, there's a big debate. Some students say, okay, if I have a 10 on 20, that's fine. I pass. And we have other students that want to go for 16, 18s and more. But how do you link that to what we would like to achieve? That it's perhaps not the grades that are that important, but the learning process. I didn't get a real answer on that one yet. So, still hoping.
It's a hard one. We heard about this summative and also formative assessment. And I think it's important. We have often the frameworks within faculties, 100% we can give summative and formative assessment. I think it's important if we have these certain percentages that we can give formative assessment, that we really use it, that we really be creative in that and include the self-assessment.
Can you explain the difference between formative and informative?
No, one was summative. That is really like giving marks. This is what is the usual thing that is done in the education system, and the other is the formative. And for example, in University of Bern, we are allowed in our faculty to give 25% of formative. So this means there will be a pass and fail, and within this, we can really include self-assessment, include peer-reviewed, includes kind of puzzle reviews and blind reviews or whatever we would try. And I think it's important to really use this space to learn students that it's much more than just a mark at the end.
And the 25% helps you to do that.
I mean, at least we have 25% where we are allowed to do that. And I think it's important that we use this part that we have, that our frameworks give us, that we do it there differently, and also there to include the learning and the assessment process throughout the learning, not just in the end of the semester. So that it is really students get used to it, and it's also important that we do it also from the teacher side. So it is, we have to assess our assessment, and also students will assess us. And also here in University of Bern, we are not happy at all, because there is this official assessment that students do. They just tick the boxes, and then you get a feedback, and you're also graded according to that. So I think also there we have to think out of the box and create our own assessment. For our bachelor and masters in sustainable development, we have different assessments that also students can assess teachers. And worse-wise, I think that we use the space that is given to us to be creative in it.
Yeah,
Interesting, no?
I can agree that the quantifying of assessments has, it has augmented in the past years. So it also in the reverse way, indeed, teachers also get assessed in that way, and it's also not a very positive evolution in the sense that it's also not a collaborative process. So it's much more like we like to work with our students in a more equal, participatory way. Also, they should be able to assess us in the same way and not in a distance from their computers, assessing. So it becomes a very distant process. And you do not learn to enter in debates, to accept diversity of opinions, and so on. And if you say, okay, I have difficulties then to give a mark, I think often these peer review processes end with a clear indication, okay, this was really a pass, or this is really a group, they weren't engaged and it's a fail. It's not impossible to grade. And you see many, for instance, the school of my children, they don't use grades anymore. So I don't know if it's the future. So maybe we have to learn to deal with qualitative reviews, with conflict, disagreement. We're not so, everything has to be put in clear tables, and that is not, it's dealing with uncertainty, I think.
Yeah, I add into that most of us were coming from this culture since Grundschule, what's the name of Grundschule? Elementary school, sorry. And then we are with this chip that we have to get the highest score possible very early on. And I mean, we as a parents, we never give grades to our children, right? You get a 9, an A in your riding the bike, right? Or learning swimming. It doesn't make sense. Then what are we providing the scores at a very early age? I mean, I was since I was 6 years old, I was also chasing the perfect score, the maximum score. Now I have
stress, and it's
now I have anxiety problems because of that. And honestly, and then when we arrive an alternative environment, for example, in, let's say, a university where they consider the scoring very important, then we're skeptic. And then even though the teacher assures us that no worry, that we don't have to worry about the score, we're still thinking about it because we are programmed that way. And this is where transformative learning comes, to gain a new perspective of the scoring. Of course, there's also institutional barriers and also this cultural evaluation that obviously there has to be a synergy between how teachers are being evaluated, how the indicators are being taken, also with this ranking system, etc. Like all of these structures are also, even though we as a teacher, I say to my students, okay, don't worry about the score, about the grade, focus on the learning. The whole structure in higher education institutions are designed to get the score.
Okay, you wanna?
I think it's really part of let go the traditional structures and opinions we are in. So it's really also us, I think all in here, we grew up with the mark system, we grew up from the very early age. So it really means that also we have to unlearn, and to let go this idea that you have to learn and you get a mark and then you get a good degree and then you get a good job that is paid well. I mean, then we come again to this economy thinking back, that it's really about let go and unlearn here, which is part of transformative learning, to unlearn our own learning.
And a challenge for all of us, I guess, here in the audience. If we move to research and publishing, should it be redesigned so that it supports co-creation instead of isolation through commodified competition? So I think sustainability is about cooperation, but publications is quite often a competition. You want to be in certain magazines or whatever published. So how do you do that? How do you transform that if needed?
I think we try to work in the same way as we do with our students. For instance, our group is called Spatial Capacity Building, and we're a very collective group. You could say we're more of a collective than a group of individuals. And yeah, we have learned many times that this is not the way you are evaluated as a professor. So you're evaluated on your individual merits. We have even had many times the question, but yeah, what did he do? Or what did she do? So in evaluations. So we have learned to play the system and to we have made ourselves distinct expertises that are complementary and to build, to name everything in a proper way so it's distinct enough. So you have to play the system. At the same time, it is just becoming more important if you want to deal with these complex research challenges to work together. And I think someone in the morning also said it also, you just have to do it. But by using and hacking the system. That is our philosophy. We just do it. We work every day collaboratively. We build our own peer networks. We open up our research processes, tools, and results to others. And we have built also an online platform, the Andere Markt, where we display all the networks we built with participants, with researchers all over the world, the tools that we develop to do our processes, the results. We publish everything openly.
So it's more open source, more commons, more
commons. And we build our own commons. And you could say, okay, you're selling your points, but it's not true because people get to know your work, they engage with it and so on. So in the end, it benefits you. So it's not only by following the system. I think it's building bottom up other systems.
Are you supported by the head of the university? I mean, is this because there's the ranking and there is the scores? Isn't that going against it?
Yeah, they tolerate it, but at the same time, it's not supported. Societal valorization is not supported, and it's not the university here only. It's a Flemish policy. There's only market valorization. So if you contribute something to society, it doesn't count. It doesn't count. So you cannot put it anywhere. You can only put it in your biography, and it makes you a better person, a nicer person, but that's all.
That's the case in Belgium?
That's the case in Belgium.
How is it in Germany? Because that's a very bold statement. It's not being valorized, your contribution to society. So is it different in Germany or different in Switzerland? I'm going a bit off the script, but hope you don't mind.
I think I can't say like in general for Switzerland because I think it's, I mean, also within university you have different policies. Regarding, but I will somehow switch to the fifth question because there was also about the rewards. I mean, it was connected also how you get rewarded. And what I know now from the University of Bern, we signed the San Francisco Declaration on Research Assessment, the DORA Declaration. That is an important declaration, but it's also hard to really put it in place. But it really means that when you have a new professorship, that it's not just about your CV and your publications. It's really that it's also about quality. It's about your experience in teaching as well. It's about public outreach. It's about your academic self-assessment. So it's really, there are different criteria. So I think this is something within the university that it's what's an important step. But still, I mean, the hard facts, looking at publications, it's still there. But if, I don't know if I can switch back to the sixth question, because I think there, the problem is the commodified competition, because I think competition itself, it's nothing bad. I mean, if I look at my kids, I mean, they really love to compete, and I think it's something natural, but as long as, and how to say, normal competition, but healthy competition. But if it's commodified, also if we commodify knowledge, for example, it becomes an object, it becomes something that, can be paid for. So I think it's the commodified competition is the problem of this process.
I just want to first, because it was about this Dora, and I also had it as an example. I was so happily surprised when I was in I'm in the Finnish science committee, and they have these Dora guidelines, and the discussions are very well monitored. If someone says, but she only has 30 publications, they say, no, we have to delete this from the conversation. Can we say, did we look at the content? Were it valid publications? Were they relevant for the field? So you have to put the discussion differently. And that's already a very big ethical step in how we deal with science. So I really liked the Dora guidelines, and I agree completely, it's very difficult to apply, but it moves away from the commodified competition. Yeah.
Well, I think I have enough experience to talk about that case in Germany, but I can talk about Mexico, which also is the same. Yeah, like all around the world, our practice, pedagogical practice and research practice has been commodified and reduced to numbers, which is very frustrating, because I think somehow, that people, I don't know who or the institution, they don't trust us. You need to see the numbers. For example, in Mexico, there's these national systems of researchers. So with a system where there are 3 levels, and the higher level, you get more money, extra money, etc. So it's also a very good position to access funding, etc. And what the evaluation for that is that they only consider the number, the publications, and also how many courses the person has taught. But it doesn't say anything about the quality of the teaching, etc. And everyone right now, for example, in Mexico, Latin America, are competing against who has the better numbers. And in Mexico, at least, it will take a while to remove that kind of thinking. And I'm also very frustrated because of that, because somehow, for example, in social sciences or sustainability sciences with social perspectives, it's kind of hard to get publications like compared to other fields in knowledge, where they can, I don't know, engineering fields and medical fields, where they can get 5 articles per year, and for example, in sustainability social sciences, only 1 or 2, because of the nature of our job. And so,
yeah, I have the impression that you all 3 seem to agree that we have to move towards transformational learning, not only assessments for students, but also for publications, for example. What are the barriers that makes it apparently so difficult to change? What stops us of changing it? Or what would be success factors to make it happen? So it's the first question.
Still connected to publications?
And perhaps also the assessment of students, because that also seems to be an issue to transform the way we do it. But you can choose one of the 2 to give your answer, and then
I can continue quickly. In transformative learning theory, we have this element that is called frames of references, or meaning perspectives, meaning schemes, which are these perspectives or schemes through which we understand and act in the world. And we need to acknowledge that, and to know that we are coming, for example, that we are coming from a culture where the evaluation since very early in our childhood was getting the highest score.
how do we change that?
That's different. We have to induce, coming back to transformative learning, to foster critical reflection, self-critical reflection in our practice, and also taking the perspective of others, or how others are doing it, but also it comes this, when I talk about this, it seems that I'm talking about individual level, and the challenge is to translate this to the social level. How can we foster this kind of reflection at the institutional level? That's the big challenge that I don't want to.
Okay, so a change on an individual level, but on a systemic level as well.
Yeah, I think it's indeed. I think most institutions are already realizing, okay, we have to work a bit more participatory. We have to work with the community, and with companies and so on. And so we have that reflex already. So students, we do not put them in the cocoon anymore, or not always anymore. But still, the reflection remains very institution-driven. So we do it because we want to gain support for our institution, we want to test something, and so on. So really transforming learning environments is something else. So I think the participation model of institutions needs to change to become, again, what I call reworlded, to take into account that there are many worlds and we are just one part of it. And that requires a skill, indeed, that needs to be nurtured very early on. And a skill that we were not so grown up in is to enter into public debates. You had an example from Hannah Arendt, from the Greek agora, where the Greeks were, after work, they came to the agora to debate. It was part of daily culture to be part of diverse debates. And it's something we need to relearn. Our students, our teachers, our institutions, and it's a capability that we have to nurture much more. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I think it's also be brave to really break out of your bubble. I think it's so easy also now within here, because in many things we will agree. I think many of us, we really believe in transformative learning and these approaches. But to really, talk to people that you would not talk, or talk to people in the train, what I did yesterday. I mean, it was so interesting with a lady from the pharma industry. And then she said, I have to look up this donut economy. Maybe I can include it because we want to have sustainability in our business. And I mean, really to do this transdisciplinarity, because often we do it within small projects that we include different stakeholders. But I think we really have to also do it in our daily life to approach people that maybe we would not do naturally, because it also, step out of this. We also this morning in a parallel session, we talked about this safe space, and we said safe space to be brave within then. But I think, this safe space is not always given, but to also leave sometimes a safe space to try and to do the dialogue, and also this policy science dialogue, as we often call it. Let's do the policy science dialogue, but we have to do it not just on official panels, but we also have to do it in our daily life.
So let's involve you. Yeah. So what would be a question that one of you would really want to ask now to one of the three panel members here? Yeah.
Hi, Vivek here from India.
I'm going to give you my mic. We only have like 10 minutes. So brief question.
Yes. So the question I have is this. We are talking about the evaluation assessment process and the problems with it. Do you think that its conflation with the fact that it determines economic outcomes is one of the reasons why we want to get rid of it? Right now, if you get bad marks in an exam, or if you get less grades amongst your peers, it has economic consequences. What about decoupling economic consequences from the process of evaluation? Because if evaluation is a reflective exercise, then it's very, very useful. But right now it's being used as a stick to create economic behavior. So I'd like to ask a question about decoupling the two.
Very good question. So it's linked to economics. So we're doing it because it's linked to financing, monetarizing, commodifying the outcome. True or not true, and what do we do about it?
With this question, I just want to come back to the thing about the publication, because it explains also, I mean, this was the idea of having open access. I mean, this idea is a good idea, but what happened? There was economic interest. Open access is there, but the publisher behind, I mean, they have huge not costs, I mean, they have huge profits, not interest. They also have interest, profits. And I mean, also there, the idea to have our research open access and to share it, as you said, we also share it. But looking at this publication, I mean, this incentive having this economic growth not coming to this well-being economy, as we heard this morning. I think this is also at the core also of this question, that we really have to decouple that, because as long as we have to have good marks and good grades to get good jobs and to have a good salary, I mean, we are in this growth paradigm.
I want to add to that, maybe it's not about decoupling it from economics, but also from understanding economics in a different way. So we always define economics in a very narrow sense, but you also have household economics. So economics is everywhere. And yeah, but if we start to recognize that, then also, for instance, if I do something for a citizen group, for instance, who want to improve their environment, it's an economy in itself, but it's not rewarded because it's not considered as an economy. So if we start to diversify what we recognize as economies, we can also diversify the way we work, the way things are rewarded. There's this nice book from Gibson and Graham, I don't know if you know it, but it really diversifies this idea of economy. And I think that is a second related issue that needs to be tackled, I think, yeah.
Yeah, just to reframe the idea of economics and to, yeah, because I'm coming back to the issue of trust. For example, when we are engaging in a master program, doctoral program with external funding, and some projects, they have to present results as a way to as a way to prove that you made good use of the funding, of the money. But somehow, in some cases, the funders or the money, they are behind you, like chasing you to give results. While in other types of funding, other agencies, they trust you. They give you all the conditions. Yeah, that's also the conditions. For example, the one that I like is the German Academic Exchange Service, where we have a lot of people from abroad, I mean, Latin America, Africa, Asia, and they just embrace them, or they provide a lot of funding. Like, this is one of the best scholarships that I have seen. And one can think like, what is is this agency not losing money, or what is the purpose of that? And when it's not about only the results, but this kind of funding project or funding structure is somehow based on the trust of the students, that they are while providing the good conditions to perform.
A lot of thoughts. Maybe, I don't know, so the purpose of education is, and we're looking for transformation, we need to transform also the way we run our economy to become probably a serving economy, serving society, and not the other way around. And for that, we have institutions like universities and business schools who try to achieve that. But if I hear you correctly, we're still trapped, even in universities and business schools, in the model of delivering output, which is afterwards monetarized one way or another. And so we're talking about decoupling. But on the other side, you say it depends how you look at different economies. I'm coming back to the base question and perhaps adding also for each of you as a question, how do you think we can include in an inclusive way transformational learning within our institutions and for students and for PhD programs and for publications? If you were, I'm the only one there, okay. If you were in charge, imagine you're in charge of a university, how would you do it? What would be the main topic that you would change? You have a wand, it's a magician trick. You have a wand, and what would you use? What would you use it for? To really make it happen, transformational learning at all its different levels.
I will invest in the formation of teachers.
So invest in the formation.
I mean, the training of. Well, one thing that is also bothers me is that we tend to think that a doctoral title, that because I have a doctoral title, that then I am a good teacher, and then we are very, very arrogant to say, oh no, I don't need some pedagogical training for that. But not even professors with permanent positions. I mean, many of the professors I have had in my life, the worst, they had permanent positions and they had doctoral titles.
It's
and
so because you can write books and publish that.
And the thing is like to invest in the formation of teachers. For example, if we have tutoring programs for students, why don't we have tutoring programs for teachers?
Applause or not applause?
This is
I don't know.
Because I mean, even for us as young teachers, then we enter university, enter organization, then we are left alone.
But it's linked to the assessment. Today they are assessed on the number of publications, not assessed on the way they're teaching. So it's not an incentive. So you would form and learn or teach professors to become better professors, and probably assess them differently than it's being done now. Okay, that's your wish. Your 2 wishes.
Yeah, maybe mine is a bit predictable, but I think we should, in my dream, Flanders transforms and has not only 2 pillars, the market valorization and the scientific valorization, but also the societal valorization rewards it. And I think once you reward the teachers for it, the students will understand better also. You transfer it also in the way you work and the way you do research, the way you teach. At this moment, it is voluntary work, and it's something you do because you're almost an activist. Yeah.
So you want societal valorization included in the way of being.
If you really want to work seriously on the urgent challenges today, you cannot do that within the boundaries of current parameters. So, yeah.
Yes, last but not least, Lilian.
What I would really do is to unfold the power structures, because I think as long as we are not really laying down our power structures, and I think we somehow touched upon this also this morning by decolonizing, I mean, we know who owns the big journals, we know who is guiding the huge universities worldwide. I think it's really important that we are aware about that and that we lay it on the table, and that we also are brave to show that where is the power, who has the power, and that we can unfold this and really change that.
Thank you. Big applause for the 3 panel members. We're going to give them a present, as we did this morning. I'm looking over there. I hope you enjoyed it. For me, it's a very critical topic, and also for you apparently, and also probably for the people sitting here in the audience, because it's indeed part of how can we change society. It starts with how do we change perhaps our universities, but the people working within it, how are they being rewarded, and so on and so forth. So there are a lot of ideas here shared. You go back afterwards, please start implementing them, because I think we need you all to support that change. Otherwise, it's not going to work. Okay. So before you leave, practical issues, and I think I had 3. 1 is already done, so there are 2 left. Those of you who enrolled for the trip at 4 o'clock, you have to be at 3:55 p.m., so 15:55 p.m. at the exit of this prison, university, in front, because the bus or the buses are going to stop, but only for a few minutes, because they're actually not really allowed to stop there. So be there at 5 to 4 so that you can board on time. Those of you who have luggage somewhere here or given to other people, make sure you take your luggage with you, because you're not going to return here anymore. There is another workshop. Enjoy it, and hope to see you all at 5 minutes to 4 for the excursion, and it's really worth to join. See you later.